Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamana Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaimudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious in the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, I have text 31. Is that behind? What do you have? 31. Okay. So, On this 5th day of September 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still in Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 26, Description of the Hellish Planets. Text number 31, which I'll recite myself. It's prose. Ye tvihavai purusha purushamedhena yajjante yascha striyo nuprishun kadantitang chate pashava iva inhita yamasadane yatayanto raksho ganaha saunika iva swadhitina vadaya srik pabanti nrityanti chagayanti charishyamana yateha purushadaha. Well, there's some singing in there. What's that? Gayanti. Let's find out. There are men and women in this world who sacrifice human beings to Bhairava or Bhadrakali and then eat their victims' flesh. Those who perform such sacrifices are taken after death to the abode of Yamaraj, where their victims, having taken the form of Rakshasas, cut them to pieces with sharp swords. Just as in this world the man-eaters drank their victims' blood, dancing and singing in jubilation, their victims now enjoy drinking the blood of the sacrificers and celebrating in the same way. Nectar. Text 32. In this life, some people give shelter to animals and birds that come to them for protection in the village or forest. And after making them believe that they will be protected, such people pierce them with lances or threads and play with them like toys, giving them great pain. After death, such people are brought by the assistance of Yamaraj to the hell known as Shulaprota, where their bodies are pierced with sharp needle-like lances. They suffer from hunger and thirst, and sharp-beaked birds, such as vultures and herons, come at them from all sides to tear at their bodies. Tortured and suffering, they can then remember the sinful activities they committed in the past. So actually we can preach on this basis because there's a popular saying, what goes around comes around. This is the meaning of it. Next, no purports here. Those who in this life are like envious serpents, always angry and giving pain to other living entities, fall after death into the hell known as Dandashuka. My dear king, in this hell there are serpents with 5 or 7 hoods. These serpents eat such sinful persons just as snakes eat mice. Text 34. Those who in this life confine other living entities in dark wells, granaries, or mountain caves are put after death into the hell known as Avata Nirodhana. There they themselves are pushed into dark wells where poisonous fumes and smoke suffocate them and they suffer very severely. 35. A householder who receives guests or visitors with cruel glances as if to burn them to ashes is put into the hell called Paryāvartana, where he is gazed at by hard-eyed vultures, herons, crows, and similar birds which suddenly swoop down and pluck out his eyes with great force. Purport. According to the Vedic etiquette, even an enemy who comes to a householder's home should be received in such a gentle way that he forgets he has come to the home of an enemy. A guest who comes to one's home should be received very politely. If he is unwanted, the householder should not stare at him with unblinking eyes, for one who does so will be put into the hell known as Paryāvartana after death. And there are many ferocious birds like vultures, crows, and cocktees who will suddenly come upon him and pluck out his eyes. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, in this reading and the previous reading of the description of these hells, I was suddenly thinking of a reality that corresponds to this, and that is that when we leave the spiritual world, which is full of unadulterated happiness and bliss, eternal life, just the opposite of what we've been reading, we're put into this world. And there is so much suffering. Madhu, would you like to attend the class? Please, over here. We have this bench over here. You can sit there. Move over a little bit. Thank you. And the so-called pleasures, what to speak of the pains in this world, this material world, are relative to the bliss in the spiritual world, similar to what we are reading now relative to this life in this ordinary world, in this material world. In other words, we hear these things and we think, boy, I mean, if you're at all intelligent and you believe it, you want to avoid that, right, somehow. Even if you have no clue about Krishna consciousness, we just hear about it. So that's an impetus for acting morally, not doing any of the things that are described here, you know, trying to be kind to other people. And other animals, living entities. Basically, when you read it, almost all of these hells are descriptions of people who cause suffering to other living beings, human beings, or now we have animals or anything. So we're really in a situation right now where there are all kinds of hellish things, punishments going on. There's millions of people in this world who don't have enough to eat, who are beset with wars, threatening of wars, starvation. It's happening as we speak. That's a fact. But in addition, there's also apparent enjoyment going on. You know, there's sense gratification. That's happening as well. But devotees, we're assured that even if we do a little devotional service, chant the holy name, we're not going to see these hells, which is encouraging. But that's still, if we don't, if we say, well, that's great. I lived in the temple when I was 23 to 25. That was 40 years ago. And then, it wasn't for me, or I couldn't do meet the strictures, and so I've just been leading an ordinary life since then. But that means you've been covered by ignorance, because you're just for staying in the material world. What to speak of going to these hells? You're at risk, and ultimately it's sure to happen, to suffer grievous pains and all kinds of things. Just on this plane, whether it's hell or not. So the key to understand, the origin of all this is that we have to get out of ignorance. It's very clearly explained in the Nectar of Devotion that the origin of sin, which is the origin of suffering, is ignorance. One may think, well, that's only if I get caught. That's only if I get caught. In other words, and for me to be happy in this world, I have to have so many dollars, so much money, and I can't do it working, a 9-to-5 job at, $8 an hour. If you can find such a job, So therefore, I have to become a criminal. I have to, join with my friends, we form a little gang, and we'll rob people, burglary, whatever, So that I can be happy in this world. I can have enough money to do what I have to do. So that's assuring yourself, if there's no tinge of Krishna consciousness, it's just then you're going to one of these hells, if you believe it. It's going to happen whether you believe it or not, but So how is it that ignorance is the source of sin? We can accept. I think everyone can accept that sin is the son of suffering, either in this life or later life. Most people, I think, can understand that. That if they, if I get caught, But it's right there in the word itself. The word ignorance is that even if you learn something, if someone's trying to teach you this science, but you don't have any faith in it, or if you have a little faith, you just ignore it. In other words, nobody else in it, in Kali Yuga is like that. So many people are apparently happy, they're on top of the world, and we learn that they're criminals, they're cheating on the taxes at least, with this. So that if I'm going to make it in this world, I have to cross the line, because there's so much of that, and without association with devotees, and reading and hearing the philosophy and practicing, then that faith doesn't take hold. And you can just ignore it. Oh, this is just another religion. This is just a, I don't believe in God. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So you just put that aside, and you live in the world of duality, and you're fraught with ignorance. And by that ignorance, you commit so many sins, even unknowingly, and you pave your way for grievous suffering in this world and the next world. So our job, both personally and in our efforts to help others, which is always an integral part of bhakti. You can't really be a bhakta if your all desire is I'm going alone to the Vrindavan and I'm just going to sit there and chant Hare Krishna. We just heard was that in the purport? The long purport he was reading, the very first one in the Bhagavatam, but it's throughout Prabhupada's books, that especially in the line of Gaudiya Vaishnava, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he had these two channels of his life. One was that he was experiencing the highest ecstasy of separation in the mood of Srimati Radharani, and he's teaching us with that. But he also made a special effort to go out. The South Indian tour especially shows that, and to give as many people as possible Krishna consciousness. Now he had such potency that if he would just go down the road chanting in ecstasy, people would see him and they would get prema. They would become very, and then they would go back to their home villages and people would meet them, and in this way he spread Krishna's consciousness throughout the whole of South India. So that potency we don't have. But if we follow carefully and we follow Prabhupada's program, we can also become agents of Lord Chaitanya. Whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna. Whoever you meet, offer them a book. Chant Hare Krishna. Go in the parties and chant and distribute prasadam and all the things that we do to attract people who aren't complete demons. It's like, the Madhyama Adhikari, right? We're meant to come to that platform. Ishvare tat arineshu balisheshu dvisatchucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. This is what we try to come to. We want to come to the Mahabhagavat platform, the Uttama Adhikari, but that's a ways off. But we can aspire to this platform. What is it? So what does he say? This is the 9 Yogendras describing the different levels of devotees. So in Sanskrit, they have this wonderful thing, which is not so prominent in English, but you can have 4 different things. In this case, 4 different categories, and then you have 4 different descriptions, and they match up one to one. So you have 4 elements here: Ishvara, Adineshu, Balisheshu, Dvichachisha. So Ishvara is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adineshu are those who are related to him. Those are the devotees. Balisheshu are people who are ignorant and innocent. In other words, they could be receptive if we present in the right way. They're not out and out declared demons, arch enemies of God, And then you have those declared atheists. They're not just agnostics. They know that there's no God, and they want to save the people from the benighted, religion and like that. They're on a mission. Those are the people you ignore. You can't really do much with them. So the 4 different ways you relate to these 4. Prema, the first, you try to develop love for Ishvara, for the Supreme Lord. Maitri, friendship with the devotees. Very important that you interact with them and you glorify Krishna together. That's the advantage. You learn from them, and then you glorify, you serve them. So that's prema, maitri, and kripa. For the innocent, for those people who are not out and out demons, they're just victims, and they're trying to live a life in this world. You try to show mercy by giving them as much Krishna consciousness as they can. A lot of kirtan, a lot of prasadam. When Prabhupada, he came to America, and he struggled and struggled, and he was able to start Krishna consciousness in the United States. The famous, in the mid-60s, late 60s. He more or less didn't go back to India right away. Although he would sometimes go back down to the port, to the pier, and to ask what's the next, ship back to India. But he would never actually take that. He could have got on there and gone back, and that would have been the end of things. But he was determined, do or die. He was Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi. Very important is that verse in the second chapter of first canto. The very determined Krishna consciousness, one-pointed intelligence. Ekeha Kodanandana. And if you're not, then you're all over the place. Your mind goes here and there and here. But and in the purport, Vishnu Chakravarti has described how this means to take the order of the spiritual master into one's heart and regard it as one's life and soul. And Prabhupada had gotten that order. And take Krishna consciousness abroad, preach in English, right at the very beginning, as soon as he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he was doing it in England, he was doing it in India. He started the most ambitious result, what he had was in Jhansi, the League of Devotees. And I often think how fortunate we were that it didn't work out, because he could have easily stayed there and done it in India. But it didn't work out, and so he finally comes to 68 years old. He's written his first Bhagavatams, the first canto, with great effort, heroic effort, no money, trying to write a book and publish a book, he's got donations, etc. And then it was not then or never, he was already 68, if he's going to do it, he has to do it. So he somehow was able to get the free ticket, get all the paperwork and all of the stuff, and he got out of India, on that incredible ship. So he's the Acharya, we have to try to get a little bit of that determination, because there's no question that the order coming from Lord Chaitanya, you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and how, Yari Dekitarta Krishna Upadesha, whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna, or the order he gave to Nityananda and Haridas to preach is also our order. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna, Shika. Now this is how you preach. Of course we have to do it. Chant Sri Krishna's name, and worship Krishna, and follow his instructions, And the fourth one is, and give those instructions to others. I put it into a little English. We can all absorb it. Just chant Sri Krishna's name and worship him with all your heart. Follow his instructions, and to others them impart. This is what he instructed Nityananda to instruct others to do. They would meet everyone in Bengal and Nadia and do it. So that's an essential part of not just our duty, but it's part of our sadhana. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Natatasma manusheshu kashyame priyakritama. Those who are spreading my message, who are teaching it, are most dear to me. So those who are taking risks, who are going out, who are, in the early days, Prabhupada, when devotees became a little advanced, especially from LA. LA was an incredible devotee making place. Prabhupada was staying there for 8 months. You can imagine how potent, everyone was just on fire. Vichujan was there, going out every day, chanting, And so a lot of devotees were being made. And Prabhupada was sending them out. Bhadranaran described, he remembered, so many different centers were founded when Prabhupada said, okay, you start a center here in Santa Fe. It may not have lasted. We don't have a center in Santa Fe now, but from that center, other devotees were made. This is how it goes. So Prabhupada was following that order, not just for himself, but he was inspiring his devotees to do it. So this is the life and soul of the Sankirtan movement. And we don't, there's not much of a fire and brimstone element to the preaching. We've just been reading it now. This is the hellish planets, and it's meant to really be a strong deterrent. If you have faith, I don't want to go there. So how can I avoid it? That'll come in the next chapter. It's not going to. Your strategy shouldn't be to commit the sin and then atone. That's not going to work. First of all, you'll soon become cynical. I don't have to worry about it. I'll atone. But after a while, say, you won't get the inspiration to atone. Because it doesn't work. It doesn't remove the desire to commit the sin. That's what you need. You need the higher taste, so the sin doesn't even appeal to you anymore. So that will come next chapter when we learn about the power of the holy name. Not only to eradicate your sinful reactions, but to give you a taste for Krishna consciousness, to attract you to Krishna, So that these, what to speak of these horrible sins, even just regular sense gratification becomes distasteful and horrible. I spit at the thought, says Yamunacharya. You know. So this is, you know, a sobering. This is definitely a sobering chapter. And Parikshit he had the reaction to it, which is due to being such an advanced Vaishnava, you know, pure devotee. He felt, how can people be saved from this? You know, not how I can be saved. He knew he was saved already. But how can I help? How can people avoid these hells? Hare Krishna, welcome. So that's what I'm taking from all of this. Now, Prabhupada mentions here in this purport, this is, you know, just the opposite of the demonic mentality, you know, which gets you go through, is that according to Vedic etiquette, even an enemy who comes to a householder's home should be received in such a gentle way that he forgets that he has come to the home of an enemy. I mean, where do you see that today? But we saw it was present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. You know, just remember, try to contemplate what the Pandavas had been through with these Kauravas led by Duryodhana. There's so many ways they conspired to assassinate them, you know, all of which failed. And they had, you know, had insulted their wife grievously. All of those, they had tried to burn them in the house of lac. When I first started editing, we kept seeing this house of shellac. And we said, what is this shellac? You know, what is this house? Because no one knew the word lac. So they said, probably must mean shellac. But that doesn't make any sense, does it? So we researched and we found there's this stuff called lac, which is a very flammable substance which they made. So there's what is it, 4 or 5 or 6 different reasons why you can immediately kill someone. You know, if they steal your wife, if they invade, you know, do this, if they try to kill you. So they had suffered all of those, you know, usurped their kingdom. And yet, you know, the fighting during the day, first of all, you have Arjuna, right, that we're familiar with in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he's overwhelmed with compassion for all his friends and relatives. Not just Bhishma and Drona, those were the main ones that he didn't want to kill. But even he said, most amazingly, that what is life worth? I don't know how I'm going to live with, you know, if the sons of Dhritarashtra are all killed. These are the very ones who usurped your kingdom, insulted your wife, tried to kill you in so many ways, and he still has this sense of friendship toward them. You know, I can't live without them. You know, it was incredible, and it, you know, it's the heart of a Vaishnava who's forgiving and always trying to be positive. So they, you know, this is going on in the first chapter, and you see this. We learn from Prabhupada tells us in his description of the battle how when the conch blew at the end there, you know, of each day's fighting, then suddenly they became friends. They would have dinner together, and one would praise the other. Oh, you were really shooting the arrows very nicely. You know, you did a really good job. You know, and then the next morning, the conch blues, fight is on, kill them any way you can, you know. It's unheard of. But and of course this is the same category but in different circumstances. This is ordinary household. He has his enemy comes to the door, you know. Well, that, you know, in today's world, that's why you got an arsenal of guns in your house, right? Take one more step, I'll blow your head off. Get out of here. But here you have the Vedic etiquette, you know, that you greet them in a gentle way, forgets he's come to the home as an enemy, you know. If you're a Brahmin, you have to tell the truth. The robber comes and says, what do you got in your box? This is directly a quote from a lecture. Okay, I have so many hundreds of rupees. What is that? You know, here's the robber, but you've taken a vow of never telling a lie, you know. So this is, the Vedic etiquette and the Vedic system is so amazing. But, and if you stare at him, you know, with cold eyes, then you get punished in the hell that he's describing here. So this is so inconceivable to us because basically living in this Kali Yuga means being affected by the modes of passion and ignorance constantly. And that all of these fine qualities of Vaishnava etiquette are completely unheard of in this modern age, you know. Last time I gave class, I read some of the 12th canto descriptions of the nature of this age. And they have a list. The canto begins basically with a list of all these kings that are coming. These are all demoniac kings, one after another, you know. And they exploit the people so much with taxation and everything that they just want to go to the forest. Let me just go to live in the forest, you know. So this is coming. Hasn't yet arrived in this, you know, in this world, in this Kali Yuga. But the way things are going, you know, this is one of the things that's hard for me to understand, how it's going to last, you know, for another 427,000 years. I mean, in my short life of 75 years, things have gotten a lot worse. Just the climate has gotten worse. Well, I've been here. When I came, I remember I came around this time. I came at the end of July, and then in August came and everything, and I was just marveling at the perfect weather, you know. You get up at 72 degrees, nice and sunny, you know, whereas in Miami it would be so hot and humid, you know. I mean, it wasn't freezing like in the north in January, but it was still hot and humid. So, and then what happened, at a certain time, all these birds came. They were on their way, I think, south, because, south, to get out of the winter was coming, you know, September, October, November. So suddenly there were all these birds. I was living about a mile from here with the BTG crew. And you know how they have, all the wires are up, you see, you know, the phone wires and everything. So suddenly they just hear all these birds singing. And you look out the window, whoa, and not just ordinary birds. Sometimes you see some green special bird and all these things. And then after a week or two, you know, they would fly off and they'd be on their way down south. And it was like that for years. And also we had a trouble out here, just a few years ago. Because you bring out the maha, you know, and then all the little birds would come, and then you'd find them, they're all in the maha. So we have to cover it over, you know, like that. You never see a bird out there anymore. Millions and millions and millions of birds have died in North America because of the air pollution and because of the climate change and everything. It's happening. And in the oceans also, incredible die-off. Plastic islands near Hawaii, right? So that's all a result of demonic mentality, exploiting the earth, you know, and drawing up all these fossil fuels and just contaminating everything, you know. So we're living in that, and it's all explained very simply by ignorance and passion, trying to enjoy as much as possible, and ignoring the balance of nature, God's laws, all those different things. The Prabhupada, from the beginning, as soon as he could, he established some farms. He was so happy with New Vrindavan, you know. Live simply, off the land, be satisfied with, you know, the cows, the product of the cows, and chant Hare Krishna. That's a special, you know, essential part of it. The only way you'll be happy there is if you're enjoying Krishna consciousness, you know, worshiping the Lord. So that's the essence of what we're doing as devotees, trying to save as many people from this horrible fate that we're reading here. This is not a dream, it's not an illusion, it's not just try to scare us. These are real places, and it's all going on a subtle level, meaning that you don't have the physical body. Remember we read about someone, they get thrown off, it's a dry, there's no water, and they get thrown off a hill, and their bodies are shattered, you know? But then they get dragged up again, because it's all in the subtle body. But that's where your experience is happening anyway. When you feel some pain or pleasure from the senses, it's all because it's connected to your mind. That's where you feel it, you know what I mean? The soul is the knower of the body, including the subtle body, and the brain, you know, is connected through the nerves, and you feel the pains of the pleasure, and the mind perceives it, and the soul perceives it, and then I'm suffering, or I'm enjoying, you see. So on the subtle plane, when you die, the gross body dies, for sure. The subtle body doesn't die. This is explained in the 15th chapter. How, you know, according to your life and what you did, that you have a certain mentality, and that will be the template for your next gross body. Now in between this body and next gross body, that's where the hells are going place, in the subtle body. So you don't die. You get tortured and you don't die. You just keep, and it seems like millions and millions of years it's just inconceivable. But that's because this whole philosophy is inconceivable. And even the soul is inconceivable. What's that verse? You know that one, Vijay. Acharya bhat pashyati kashtadenam, Acharya bhat vadati tadaiva Acharya bhat chanya, anyak shrunoti, shupta nivedana chaiva kashta. Some, they hear about the soul, it's amazing. Some see the soul is amazing. And even after hearing about him, some don't believe in him at all. That's true. I mean, that's just the soul. What to speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and everything that goes with it. So we have faith in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is the foundation, and Bhagavad Gita, books Srila Prabhupada has given us. So, even though we can be, hopeful that we're not going to suffer these hells, I assume no one is, eating lobster these days, so, or the horrible things, obviously. But just like Prahlad, here's the verse that is worth remembering. Is Prahlad Maharaj, who's a Mahajan, great worshipful devotee, so much instruction from him we get, from his life and from his words. So at the end, near the end of his prayers, Hare Krishna, thanks for visiting. He says, Naivod Vijay, Padaduratya Vaitaranyas, Tvadviya Gayana Mahamata Magna Chitta. Shocetato Vimukachetasa Indriyata Maya Sukaya Padamudbhato Vimudhan. The Vimudhans are the ones we've been reading about who suffer so much. So first he says to the Lord, he's speaking to the Lord Nrsingadev, these are his prayers near the end. He says, I am not at all disturbed by anything. Na eva udvijay. Udvijay means disturbance, physical, mental, emotional. He says, no, I'm completely. Padaduratya Vaitaranyas. Because I've joined you, I'm always thinking of you, and you're across the Vaitarani River, you're already in the spiritual world. So as long as I'm fixed on you, my Lord, then I have no problems at all. And any time I want, this is very instructive for us, Tvadviya Gayana Mahamata Magna Chitta, that I can immerse my mind in an ocean of ananda, bliss, and by just singing your glories, Tvadviya, powerful glories of Nrsingadev, Gayat Mahamrita, great nectar, an ocean of nectar, just by hearing and chanting. So what problems do I have? He proved it. Even when his father's trying to boil him in oil, he's thinking of the Lord and chanting his glories maybe in his mind, and he didn't feel a thing. He's still in bliss. That's amazing. But it's true. But then he says, amazingly, the second half of the verse, Shochetato, I am lamenting. Well, what are you lamenting for? You just said you're not disturbed by anything. Shochetato vimukachetasa. Every word is important. Vimukachetasa means those who have turned their face away from you. In other words, all these poor souls who are in illusion. And they still have the enjoying spirit. Indriyata maya sukaya. For the sake of the indriyas, the senses, they're trying to enjoy this illusory, flickering happiness of maya sukaya, it's called. And he calls them vimudhan, these great fools. So he's not saying, well, the hell with them, they don't know. No, he's lamenting for them because he's feeling the empathy. And therefore, the next verse, I won't go through details, he says, I'm not going to be like so many transcendentalists who immediately leave the big cities, go to the mountains or the forest, and they purposely avoid people, vijane, where there's nobody, so that they can get their own liberation. And they're not going back to Godhead, without any feeling for the people. But he says, I'm not like that, because I don't see anyone but you that can help them, so I have to give them you. We have the clue, we benefited so much. So the natural activity and mood of a Vaishnava is, well, I've been given this great gift, there, let me give it to others and help others. And that's why we're sitting here, because Prabhupada was perfectly in that mood. He had realized Krishna, he was experiencing him in every moment. He had gotten his order, and he accepted it as life and soul. And so he tried his best in all kinds of ways, mostly by chanting and distributing prasadam at the beginning, and that's still essential, But then, of course, there's the books, because what's the difference between us and the cat? The intelligence. And the intelligence can be reached through books and through classes and through the sound and things. So that's easy. Because then, I was just, a few days ago, I was asked by, they have this program, I think it's out of Germany, where they asked devotees to speak about one of Prabhupada's books in order to try to get devotees to read it. So I did a review, and they asked me to speak on the Bhagavad Gita. So I was, you know, I was reviewing this and that and this and that, and I realized, and one quote that kept coming to my mind is Prabhupada. He said, and I found it, and I used that to begin my, is that when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you hear the Bhagavad Gita, you're like on the battlefield with Krishna. You're like having a conversation with Krishna. And the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, or the one of the main results, is to increase your faith in Krishna. Krishna is describing himself in so many ways, and he's describing us also. And those who read the Bhagavad Gita and they're prime, like Vijaya, so many others, immediately light goes on. This makes so much sense. You know, I get this newsletter from the ISKCON prison ministry. And it's amazing because so many of these prisoners, one of the main activities is to send books and literature to the prisons. And you have many times you'll have a sympathetic chaplain, because one of the things is, if you have a contingency of some prisoners who have a certain religion, you know, real religion, not just some cult, then you have a responsibility in many states. They have that to give them facility to practice. And so they have chapels there where they can chant, and they can have their books. They have a library, Prabhupada's books. So this one lady who took over from the famous lady who was based here, she joined here, Shama Priya, is Nimai's mother. She did it for many years, and she passed away. But it's been taken over by a lady named Bhakti Lata in Alachua. And so I gave a donation many years ago, a small donation, and she still sends me the newsletter, which is just emailed, you know. But it's incredible. I should read some of these devotees who've been made in the prisons, and they so much appreciate the books. It's like we need to read for appreciation. So as soon as I open the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's with me, you know. And now they're feeling, because there's so much distress, the whole in jail, it's all horrible, you know. They have time to read, and there's very little, ability for sense gratification. It's like ideal, you know. They have initiated devotees in there. Chandramauli Swami has been working with them for many years, you know, he's great. And he compiled this book of quotes from them, and I come and read some of them. They're inspiring to us. And the thing is, you know, what do they have? Well, they got the beads, they got the mantra, and they got the books, you know, and they're in a very troubling situation. So they take shelter, and they appreciate the book so much. It's kind of inspiring to read their quotes. And some of them have been reading for years, you know, they'll quote this from the CC and the Bhagavatam and like that. So there's a whole, but what's a good lesson there is that, you know, we should take a lesson from them. We're also in a troubling situation. But it doesn't seem to be so severe. And so we're tempted to slow and not be as serious. But these books are, you know, should be read very carefully, studied, shared between devotees, you know, realization, and distributed. And that's really, that was essential. But when he would ask the devotees, are you reading? And when they said, Prabhupada, we don't have time, and he said, what's the use? These books are for you. You know, so we should get serious about that. And one of the greatest happinesses, you know, right there in the Gita, what does it say? In the 4 essential verses, at first Krishna says, Aham savasya prabhavo mattak sarvam bhavartate iti mad vabhajante mam buddha bhava samandrita. So the first half of the verse is the sambandha. You know, I am the source of everything, everything emanates from me. In other words, he's declaring, I'm God. You know, I'm what it says in the Vedanta Sutra, Tato Brahma Jigyasa, you're supposed to inquire what is Brahman, which is, as it says in the second sutra, the source of everything, that which creates, maintains, and ultimately destroys everything. Well, that's Krishna, he just declares that. Then he says, the intelligent, who believe, who understand this perfectly, they worship me with all their hearts. Iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. The Buddhas, the intelligent, who accept this statement of mine, then they worship me with all their hearts. Then the next verse, now you're in Abhideya. How? Matchita, matgata prana, bodhiyantak parasparam, katayantaschamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. Very instructive verse. They place their mind on me. They think of me all the time. They dedicate their life energy to me. They're working for me. And then they gather together and they glorify me, and in this way they feel satisfaction and spiritual pleasure. This is how I remember this one devotee. I forget his name now. He was in L.A. And he would always carry a nectar devotion in a little bag with him, you know. And he'd walk around in Dwarka, and when he'd see a devotee, he said, "Prabhu, you want to hear something?" And he'd pull out that nectar devotion and he'd start reading it, you know. This is what Prabhupada wanted us to know: share, read his books together, discuss them, and like that. And that's the great pleasure of devotees. That's, you know, you just read the CC. This is what Lord Chaitanya was doing for 16 years at the end. He was just hearing and chanting with Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the other devotees who were there. And he would, you know, have long kirtans, and then he would have, you know, in ecstasy. But that hearing and chanting, reminding each other. There's one verse says, "Smarantyak smarayantyascha." The other part is leaving me right now. Mito, like this. So mutually, you're remembering Krishna and reminding each other of Krishna. And what better way to sit there with Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam volume, Nectar Devotion, TLC, one of Prabhupada's books, and you're reminding each other of Krishna, and you're remembering Krishna. That's the life blood of devotees. That's what this association is all about. So, and then the next thing happens. Well, you know, why not give this out? You know, this nectar. What is it? It says in the Kapila Dev when he's teaching his mother. There's this thing called the Sadhu Sangashtaka. I don't know if you've ever heard me go in it. There's 8 verses beginning with 325:20 and ending with 325:27. And where it's all about the glories of and the essential importance of associating with sadhus. And you got that verse, Tatiksha Karunika, who is a sadhu, he's tolerant, full of mercy, has no enemy, friend to all, you know. And it goes through, and you know, basically who's a sadhu? Devotee. Maya Vesha Manoya. And then when he gets into it, Satam Prasangan Mama Virya Samvido. This is like a description of what Prabhupada wanted ISKCON to be. You know, the association of devotees, and you hear about me, and what do you develop? Shraddha, Bhakti, Arati and Bhakti, step by step. And he said faith in Krishna, attraction to Krishna, and pure devotion to Krishna. Then the next verse, he says, this, and you naturally become detached from matter and attached to Krishna. And then the last line, Vrijabir Yoga Marga. This is the easiest. Vrijabir means easy. This is the easiest form of yoga. You know, and what's the essence and the pinnacle of this sadhu sangha and hearing and chanting? Sankirtan. Hearing the holy name. In other words, chanting Hare Krishna and singing together, the Yuga Dharma. But it expands into all the books and all these other subject matters. And then when you're chanting Hare Krishna and you know you're remembering all these things about Krishna, that's the ideal. Ultimately, Krishna reveals more and more of himself to you that way. So that's what this society is all about. And when you get absorbed in that and you're involved in that, you know, that process, both personally and giving Krishna consciousness, these hells, they just become impetus for preaching, to try to help other people avoid it. You don't have to, you know, you're not afraid, what's going to happen. You know, I remember when I was a kid, no, that was before, you know, now you've been chanting for so long, you know, it's not, but, you know, this is impetus for Sankirtan movement. Okay. Whoops, I went a little over time. Any questions, comments?
Dravida Prabhu?
Oh, we don't have tapas to manage things.
Yes, he's in India, and he just asked me to introduce the Zoom questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. He's doing
and Maitreya Prabhu is waiting.
You know he's in India, right?
Yes, I know.
He's 10,000 miles away.
Prabhu is in India.
You're 6,000 miles away. He's at 10,000 miles away. Okay, go ahead, Prabhu. We'll get to it. Go ahead. What's the question?
No, Maitreya Prabhu goes first.
Oh, Maitreya. You there, Maitreya? Uh-oh.
We cannot hear you, Maitreya Prabhu. You need to
you're on mute.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
All
I've
day.
unmuted. There we go.
Okay.
I'm in Washington. I'm only a few hundred miles away. So I actually had a question about how we can become more fired up, but you answered it so nicely and gave so many examples that this is really more of an appreciation. I traveled with Chandramauli Swami for a while before he opened the Cincinnati Center. I was in New Vrindavan for a little while, and there's such a nice balance between Sankirtan and distributing, but then also regrouping and tasting the nectar. And I remember he and I would sit down and discuss the philosophy and read the books, and at a certain point, it just becomes it's like having a really nice cake. The next thing is you're looking for who to share it with.
Exactly.
And especially, in the farm communities, it works only if you're fired up. You can imagine a bunch of people used to sense gratification going off by themselves to a farm could be a disaster. But because of Prabhupada's books and the whole process of Harinam Sankirtan, and then the outreach, because there's always a preaching arm. No one's just sitting on a farm growing corn all the time. You're hearing and chanting, you're reading the books, and then the next thing is you want to distribute it and bring other people to see it. And anyway, thank you. Wonderful class. I really enjoyed it.
So I don't know if I shared this verse. Okay, this is question period. Go on too much. You have some. So then, Vijay Krishna, can you wait?
Yes.
Can you just wait?
Can I go now?
We have a local question.
Of course, Prabhu. I can wait. No problem.
Yeah, we're all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So in this purport, Prabhupada is explaining where, if you visit the householders and if they are not doing their duties, then they go to hell. I could see the skeletons of this in my childhood, where, at least families who are connected, I used to go to the other place without informing them in advance.
You just show up.
Yes. And they used to receive us so nicely, and although there were skeletons of the actual way in which you interact with one another, right? Still, it was very beautiful. It had. So
you experienced not the hellish part, but the other part where people were greeting you, even though you.
Yeah, so and even now I see that all that is going away, because it's become like the West, where you travel, you do your job somewhere, you go travel there, so your entire family is moved there. It's broken.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is the scattering of everybody all over there.
And also technology, right? So we are using the technology, and we are not
interacting with people on a personal level. Yeah, it's a disaster. Okay, Vijay Krishna, you're up.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. Dandavat pranams, you're very kind. Prabhu, the translation to text 33 has the following quote, "Those who in this life are like envious serpents, always angry and giving pain to other living entities, fall after death into the hell known as Danda Shuka," end quote. So based on this quote, my question is, you know better than me that Vaishnavas, pure devotees, sometimes are entitled to get angry. So Vaishnavas getting angry when, how, and where?
All right. Well, let's take the ideal. Prabhupada, sometimes he would become angry. And the analogy would be like with a loving parent who, the child is in ignorance, and he's crawling toward a fire, in a fireplace. And the mother freaks out, "Don't, get out of there! Are you crazy?" Or, gets angry with the child and pulls him and slaps him, and maybe even the child cries. But it's all done out of love. The motive is not to enjoy tormenting somebody or anything like that. That Prabhupada tells the story of this one boy, I think it's a true story, who was raised by his aunt. The mother died or something, and he was an orphan, so so he was raised by his aunt. And the aunt was always very, soft with him, and didn't discipline him. And then he became a criminal. Would he kill somebody? Yeah. He killed somebody. And so he's in jail, I guess, waiting execution. And so his aunt came to visit him. And, you know, they figured, okay, it's all right, so she can go in the cell. So she went in, and he said, I'd like to tell you something privately. So she said, okay. So she said, what do you want to say? And he went there and he bit off her ear. Was it bit off the ear? Yeah. And she was screaming, why do you do that for, you know? Because you didn't discipline me. You were too soft, you know? I needed, and therefore I became a criminal, and now here's my situation. So the thing is that there is a necessity for that, to show, you know, not out of love, you sometimes become angry. And Prabhupada showed that. You know, somebody would do some nonsense or fail to do something. When a famous event, you know, Prabhupada's in the LA for so many months. And devotees started to take for granted that he was there. And then one day he takes the Charanamrita, salt in the Charanamrita. And then another day he sees his spiritual master's pictures upside down on the altar. And he says, what's going on, you know? That famous familiarity breeds contempt. Although devotees weren't feeling contempt, but they had lost their edge, you know, they were feeling. And so Prabhupada, of course, reacted angrily to this Charanamrita. Who was responsible? And the girl who had made it wasn't punished because she was a new Bhakti, but the lady who was in charge of the girls, you know, she got some, you know. So how do? But it's said that those who were experiencing those things, that Prabhupada, it would pass like a cloud in the sky. In other words, Prabhupada himself was not affected by the anger, which when it's in the result of the mode of passion and ignorance, it poisons the whole body. You know, this effect, you know, really. Though Prabhupada was using it as like a scalpel, he was using it as a tool to discipline devotees. And so oftentimes the same devotee, he would then show some kindness and smile, and also the devotee would feel that he's not, you know, of course, sometimes the devotees did something so bad against other devotees that they would be banished, very, very rarely. But mostly he was just using it. So that's the difference. And you know, this is like always angry, not always angry. Occasionally, when absolutely necessary, to show anger in order, out of love, so the devotees can learn and they can, you know, never forget it. In fact, those devotees who experienced it were thankful. They said this was like Satsarup Maharaj. It was known that he was, you know, completely sold out to Prabhupada, you know, and he was very advanced. And so Prabhupada would sometimes get on his case, and he would take it very humbly, and, you know, that would be, he'd love it. And so that's the categorical difference, you know, and between the anger of you know, or he Prabhupada get angry at these demons who were misinterpreting the Bhagavad Gita and causing so much pain to people. You know, but the result isn't, okay, now, you know, we'll have a hit out on him. No, it's not like that. It's that we'll preach harder, distribute Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, you know, arrange for programs so that I can, you know, he would be at a program and the Mayavadis are speaking. So in the middle of their speech, he said, all right, start kirtan. You know, that happened in India. So that's, you know, the Vaishnavas can become angry for preaching, not for themselves, but because the innocent are being misled or devotees are being harmed. I mean, that anger, you know, has to be there. If the devotee or the deities, you know, are being harmed. So anger has its place, and Prabhupada would give the example of Arjuna. He said, to fight, you have to be angry. So he became angry, and, you know, on the battlefield. So there's a place for it, Prabhu, but it's always in the service of Krishna, and never that because my sense gratification has been limited, which is a useful thing, and therefore it's not polluting for the body, mind, and soul. In fact, it's a sign of surrender to Krishna. That's my answer.
Yes, a very helpful, outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much, Dravida Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And I think we better adjourn because it's late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol.